Welcome to another episode of Living with Purpose. Today I have Sharmila Rathinam. She's a close friend and also a entrepreneur, a business leader, but she is also the founder of Eat Happy Now, which is really focusing on food rescue and feeding people that are hungry real time. It's a very innovative approach. She's using both technology and volunteers to think about how we can continue to feed people that need food and how to get food into the hands of people that need it. She'll obviously tell a little bit more about it. So with that, please join me in welcoming Sharmila to the podcast. Sharmila, welcome.
Thank you so much, Akhtar, for inviting me to be a part of this podcast. I've been watching your podcast as the past few months, and I'm really thrilled and excited to be part of this podcast. So thank you.
You have a fantastic story. So let's dig in. So talk about where did you grow up? What was your childhood like? Talk a little bit about that journey, your parents. What were some guiding and defining moments?
I was born and raised in south of India in a city called Chennai. I had very humble upbringings and grew up in a normal middle-class family. I have two siblings and my dad had a job which kept moving across India, but primarily I was raised in Chennai. I pursued my education there, went to school, college, and became a CPA there, starting my career as a tax consultant in Arthur Andersen and later on joining Ernst & Young. Some of the defining principles while growing up, I was raised with the principle that any food served on my plate must be eaten. And wasting food was just non-negotiable. I was constantly reminded by my mom about the number of people who go hungry every day. And I'm sure a lot of the listeners know India's poverty was and is at a level which is unimaginable. That almost 50% of the people are below the poverty line, struggling to have 3 meals a day. So this principle of not wasting food was deeply embedded in me and shaped my perspective for life. That's what I was raised with, and any food which was made in the house would always be eaten by our house help or was given to people around. So food waste was something which we never saw growing up in India.
Talk a little bit about your schooling, your siblings. What was growing up in India like?
Schooling, yes, I went to an all-girls convent school, went to a Catholic school. We go to a convent, and I had my 2 brothers, older and younger. We all would go to school together, come back. A very memorable childhood of playing, on the streets, talking to neighbors, sharing all the memories and exchanging. So that was my childhood. It was always being overshadowed by my brothers, I must say for sure. But nevertheless, it was different, and it was very protected, like what you would see the children growing up here, because I would be sent only to a girls' school because that's the protection my parents always wanted. And it was just like a normal childhood, being with friends and growing up there.
And after schooling, so talk a little bit about any other interest in school. So were you doing anything around food at that time, or it was just something that was expected of you at home, because food should not be wasted?
Well, I was always interested in food, in trying food. I was very fascinated by good food. I was very curious. I would go and help my mom in the kitchen and, find how she's making things. So I was fascinated with food because I feel that I have the inner channeling, a kind of a pseudo chef as well, because I was always fascinated to food and good food per se. That was my extent of exposure to food. But my interests and hobbies were, I was outdoorsy. I would play sports in school. I learned a bit of music growing up. So that was kind of my exposure to different things growing up as a child.
So CPA, you work at Arthur Andersen and you did consulting work there.
Mm-hmm.
How did you move from there to the US?
In India, and I met my husband, Pradeep, at that point of time. I was not married. In 1999, we got married, and Microsoft brought Pradeep to Redmond. And in 1999 is when we moved to the US. And I continued my career here in financial planning and later on joined Microsoft. But that was a transition from being in India for the first 2.5 decades of my life And marriage is what brought us to the United States and started my family in Redmond and raised my 2 boys here in Redmond. And now, of course, it feels so surreal to see them all grown up and living independent lives on opposite coasts of the United States. So that's what brought us to Redmond.
And then you joined Microsoft. And what did you do at Microsoft?
Yes, I was there in Microsoft for 10 years. When I came to this country, of course, I continued my career in financial planning for the first 5 years. And so I was a financial planner with a company called AXA Advisors. And then I moved on to Microsoft. And in Microsoft, I was with, at that time, called the Enterprise Partner Group, and I managed global partner operations for Azure, managing their multi-million-dollar budgets, data analysis. And during this process, I developed scalable systems in order to drive operational efficiency and rhythm of the business. So that was what I did in my 10 years in Microsoft. I joined, of course, as a consultant for the first few years and then became a full-time employee of Microsoft.
And then you also have the real estate business.
Correct. So what had happened was, I should tell you a funny story. Of course, growing up in India, you don't see the abundance of food. So I'm going to take you back 25 years ago when I moved to this country. And the first thing which really struck me was I was overwhelmed with the abundance of food. I was really surprised with the portions, the waste. It was such a stark comparison to how I was raised in India. It was more of a culture shock to be here in this land of Big Macs and supersized drinks, where food abundance was so much. I just saw big portions, and a lot of the portions were not eaten. It was something which really stuck out to me, and saying, why is there so much food here when we didn't have so much growing up in India? So that kind of, stood out. And later on, I, of course, came to learn and understand that 40% of the food which is being produced today in the US goes to waste. And this contradiction really stuck with me. Like, how much food can be wasted in a country where there is still need and people going hungry? So that was something which kind of stuck out to me when I moved here and kept seeing this as I was here in the last 25 years. So that was a kind of a thing which kind of was a culture shock for me when I moved in. And of course, I was in Microsoft, as I mentioned, and after being in corporate for over 20 years or 2 decades is when I left Microsoft and I started my real estate business as well. Because when I left Microsoft with a deep urge to give back and make a meaningful impact, I guess everybody goes through this journey of wanting to do something different. You want to do something to make a difference. And like many people, I had the same kind of quests and need, but obviously there were no answers because, you want to do, but you don't know what and how. And that's when I got involved into real estate. I did real estate for almost 5 years, building homes, getting into subdivisions and commercial subdivision and managing commercial real estate as well. And during this time, when I was doing my real estate after Microsoft, my journey started volunteering with various nonprofits. I would just volunteer my time a little bit when I came to the country. Of course, being young, was not very exposed so much to nonprofits. So my journey for volunteering with nonprofits began after I left Microsoft. That's the time I served on various boards, Upaya being the first board I served with. I immersed myself in their missions and different missions of the other nonprofits I was part of, just understanding how nonprofits work, how their operations are. I was fascinated with the concept of learning, creating opportunities for people to fish rather than feed them every day. And that was a big principle which I learned being in Upaya for a long time. But all this work was focused on causes in India and abroad. And during this time of 5 years after I left Microsoft, wanting to find what my true calling is, what is the space I want to get in, is when I came to realize that if I'm going to do something, it has to be local in the community I call home. So that's kind of established my thinking and what I want to do during this 5 years. During these 5 years, as you said, when I got into real estate and being on these different nonprofits is when I started getting exposed to a lot of people who were struggling to know where their next meal is going to come from. I came across homeless populations where people would constantly keep squatting in my different properties, which I was managing and developing. that's when I started really giving attention to people of this food insecure population in our own backyard. You grew up, you're in a bubble, you kind of go to work, you come back, you really don't give attention to what's going on around you. And that's when my thinking opened and I started looking into what is this level of food insecurity? Why are there so many people? And even over the 10 years from the time I moved to this country, you started seeing the number of people on the streets, the homeless population increasing. Not only in Washington, even when you travel to other cities, you see the people increasing, and all this started really bothering me, and I started looking deep into this. And while I was going through this journey, I was also facing some health issues. I had some undiagnosed health issues that left me in constant pain. So I'm just now moving into explaining what led to my journey during my soul searching of what I want to do next. So I was left with constant pain, and none of the traditional medicines offered me any answers. So I started looking inward. I was drawn to a spiritual path, and that's the time when I got exposed to something called Vipassana. It's a 10-day silent meditation retreat. And during one of these retreats, I spending time in silence and meditation during these quiet moments. I think all these things which were bothering me about, wanting to make a difference for the people who I've come across in terms of people struggling to have 3 meals a day, and my principle which shaped my perspective in life of food not going to waste kept surfacing up in my silence. And that clarity of being in stillness led me to my true calling, and the idea of Eat Happy Now was inspired and in me, and that idea was born rather during that time. And when I came back, it gave me clarity. Okay, this is what I want to do and have a purpose for myself for the next 2 decades. So sorry, I went up in a long...
No. This is great. But I just want to, for our listeners, just to clarify a few things.
Yeah.
Just so that our listeners understand that, Sharmila and I both actually live in the Seattle suburbs, very wealthy neighborhoods, and yet we find these conditions that surround us. And that's the focus that she has. And, when you go and work and come back, you actually don't see anything. But once you get out into the community, you do see. I do want to kind of remind our viewers of some very interesting words that you used. That in stillness, you found clarity.
Precisely. Yeah.
It's very important for all of us to understand that we need to have moments of stillness. Because in these moments, you can actually find clarity which can lead to a purposeful approach to what you do. I just want you to go back. You kind of talked about Upaya, social ventures, very briefly by saying you got involved in it, but you also were actually the board chair.
Correct. For 6 years.
Right? And I want you to just take a minute to actually talk a little bit about why Upaya and how does that connect to your connections of being an entrepreneur and also making a difference.
Yes, I did join Upaya because I was drawn to the mission. Growing up, I was always told that I have to be independent, and I lost my dad when I was very young, and my mom did not have a job to support our family. And that adversity stuck so deep in me that every person has to be independent. A job is something which is so important and necessary in everybody's life for self-sustenance. And I got drawn to Upaya because Upaya focuses on creating jobs for the very, very poor who traditionally can't find the jobs because they're not educated. So this aspect of social venture, of going and investing in social venture companies, Upaya would go and give the first seed money to small social venture companies whose focus was basically creating jobs for the very poor. So that kind of resonated very deeply with me because I had been through that with my mom and told myself that this should not happen to anybody, right? So that kind of mission drew me to being part of Upaya. And that was the first nonprofit I joined. And eventually, yes, I joined them with being on the board, and then eventually became their board chair. And that journey was very, very formative in me being an entrepreneur, because I was exposed to so many different entrepreneurs. I would go visit the entrepreneurs. I've seen the entrepreneurs' job on site. I've interviewed job holders, met job holders, heard the stories for them, and felt how powerful this organization is in creating that job and learning and telling them how to fish rather than just constantly keep feeding them. I think that was very formative in my entrepreneurial journey as well. So I had a great time, and I had a great stint for 6 years, did a lot of fundraising for them. And I became the voice of Upaya in our community when we just kicked off, Upaya being new to our community. So I really take pride in being there and being part of Upaya as one of my nonprofits I've given most time to.
That's wonderful. So now back to where you are today. Stillness creates this clarity, and you decide to launch a social enterprise. So talk a little bit about the challenges you saw and then the solution that you've created.
Well, when I decided that I have to do something in the food insecure space and the food waste, which was always bothering me, I came back, said, this is what I want to do. And when I looked into it, of course, you have traditional food banks who are providing the food insecure population with the food that either they buy or 20% of the food is rescue. But I am here to kind of really focus on the food base. And what I found out is I wanted to be Eat Happy has to be a little differentiating factor compared to the traditional food banks here. So that's when we used technology to kind of bridge this gap with the food surplus in our ecosystem and the food insecurity which is there. So technology is a big part of Eat Happy, which is non-existent in our traditional food banks. And this technology really helps in scaling this operations of rescuing food. So that's when we got technology into solving for food waste and food insecurity. And this is something which is different. And we found that the food banks have a challenge to access culturally relevant ethnic produce and food, because they will go after traditional grocery stores, which is like the regular big chain stores, where you don't see ethnic produce coming in. And this next tier of segments of either it could be smaller stores or rather fairly large stores where food rescue was non-existent. So we took upon ourselves to create advocacy, education to these chain stores or to these ethnic stores who didn't know what food rescue meant. So we go after this segment of food rescue, and we're able to bring in the ethnic, culturally appropriate food, which is non-existent in our food banks. And that is the kind of gap we are trying to fulfill by providing access to this ethnic food. Think of us as Uber Eats or DoorDash for food surplus. So we go and onboard these big stores onto our app. We match them with the local food banks, or if it's going to be fresh produce, which not many food banks are rescuing today because of the perishable nature, or, repack the food, we pick up and we drop. So we're able to go after the perishable food in our ecosystem and take it to homeless shelters and the low-income housing groups, which is not happening today. So that is another big market we are able to go after because of the swiftness in which we're able to pick up and drop. So those are the things we're able to connect. And technology, what it does is it really helps us scale. One of our missions, our big mission, is to democratize food access through technology. What this enables us to do is to leverage the community of volunteers. We have about 475 called volunteers in our app and our Eat Happy ecosystem. The volunteers just sign up because of word of mouth. And we had about 35 volunteers sign up in April. That is 1 or 2 sign up almost every single day. And what this allows them to do is get on a platform which gives them an ease to volunteer, because everything is pre-scheduled for a month out. So they're able to see the schedule, match their schedule, and plug it in, whether it's on their way to work, or whether they're running an errand, or whether it's their time to go to the gym. So they're able to plug in the volunteer possibility, and we don't talk to them. And that's why they're able to scale this kind of a model very easily because they pick up and they drop. All the instructions are there in the app and we're able to monitor this real time. So that's our model and that's what we're trying to solve.
Just clarify a little bit to our listeners. Anybody that is here in the Seattle area, go download the app, Eat Happy Now. It's a very simple thing. It's basically you are the volunteer that is picking up food from a location and delivering it to where the need is. Whether it is to a shelter, whether it is to a food bank, and whether you're going to a restaurant or you're going to a grocery store, you can create your own schedules. And it really is a way by which waste is eliminated because you're actually extending the life of the food. Restaurants and perishable food, even in grocery stores, have to be thrown out. At the end of the day, they cannot save it. Here, you are actually being able to pick it up, deliver it to somebody that is hungry, and they can eat it. The supply chain is very controlled, so the food is not getting wasted or there is no sickness. It is controlled by, the health guidelines that the state has provided. So this is really a fascinating way to do that. Shami, this is just fantastic and thank you so very much for doing it. Let me just get you to talk a little bit about purpose, right? Why do you believe purpose is important to you and how has purpose allowed you to overcome difficulties? I think you mentioned a little bit about going to Vipassana and then this notion of stillness and clarity. So talk a little bit about the importance of purpose.
I think purpose is what drives me, right? Because first off, being still is super important because when you're still, all the answers you're looking for, even adversity which you're trying to overcome, becomes easier to overcome because it's the mind which really helps you to overcome any kind of adversity. And I think purpose makes it really exciting for anybody to get up in the morning and do something because success for me is going to be defined by the impact I can create in the community rather than paychecks and titles. So I think purpose for me is what is the impact you're able to create? And purpose gives you a meaning to go on and do something to make a difference.
So, it's actually very important to kind of reiterate that it is really about making a difference on a regular basis.
Correct. Day to day.
It's on a day-to-day basis. Small things, big things, doesn't matter. But it is about you showing up with authenticity, you showing up with your strengths and values that can actually make a difference in somebody else's life. Let's end the conversation with your one golden nugget that you would like to share, some wisdom for our listeners that you live by.
Well, I'm going to say one golden nugget which has really worked for me, and I'm kind of practicing this every day, is if you have a dream, be bold, believe in yourself and take that first step. And I think that is the most important thing for everybody. Taking that first step, believing in yourself and dream big. You don't need a lot of money or a big team. When you have clarity of purpose, a simple approach and the courage to act is all what it takes. And I guess in this day of AI and technology, I think having a solution driven by this technology is going to really help scale whatever efforts you're trying to do. So dream big and go after it and be bold to take that first step.
I love the fact that, it is courage to act. So let's always make sure that we have the courage to do small acts, which eventually lead to making big differences. So with that, Shamila, thank you very much for being on the podcast. Again, remember, purpose is this renewable source of energy that continues to drive humanity forward. It is a switch. Turn it on. Shamila, thank you very much. And hopefully you will join us for another session, which we will release soon. Thank you. Download the app. Eat Happy Now.
Thank you very much, Akhtar. And I really enjoyed being in the podcast and sharing my journey. And I hope everybody will take that next step in actually willing to volunteer their time and make a difference.